The idea that you could be peer pressured into believing that what you're seeing with your eyes isn't the case, it's truly a remarkable thing. It really is amazing at the sort of ability for the left, the establishment, to stay on message. Now, let me be completely honest with all of you. You shouldn't take my word on how the Harris interview went. You shouldn't. You should watch it yourself and come to your own conclusion. The same is true of anything. A State of the Union speech, a debate, a town hall, any of these things. All of us have biases. All of us, hypothetically, should be individuals, and we should come up with our own conclusions on things. And even though I'm being authentic, and I am, and I'm giving my honest opinions on things, I'm not beyond bias, and I'm not right 100% of the time, just like 99.999. But in all seriousness, you should check things out for yourself when you have time. The problem is, when do you have time? When do I have time? Certain events occur that millions of people watch and that are bigger ticket items, such as a presidential debate. Probably, if you're interested in politics, you make time to see that. But how many people watched the Ted Cruz debate? With Allred, I think, is the guy that he was debating. How many people watched the Elizabeth Warren debate? I didn't watch either of those. I only saw small clips of those debates on X, and I saw people saying Ted Cruz crushed it and Ted Cruz got crushed. And I saw people saying Elizabeth Warren crushed it and people saying Elizabeth Warren got crushed. What am I to believe? If I see a segment like 4 minutes, 2 minutes, I could say, this was a good point made in this segment. But that's not going to be indicative of an entire debate. And more importantly, that's not going to give you an insight in exactly what was going on through the tone. So I prefer to watch things myself in real time if possible, and then come up with my own conclusion. And then I do like reading other people's takes or watching other people's takes as well. But with all of these things out there, it's impossible, unless your full-time job is doing politics, to actually sit down and dig into the details of many of these things, whether it be reading court decisions or watching trials or watching debates or reading through 1,000-page bills. With all of these things out there, even someone like me, who as a hobby enjoys watching these debates and looking into these things, I probably only get to see like 5 to 10% of much of the stuff that I would want to dig into. So then I'm relying for my takes on many things on what other people are saying. And isn't that what history is? Isn't that what we all do for events that we weren't around for? We're relying on recounting and interpretation from others through testimony of people or reporting of people that were there at the time, that's been filtered through different lenses. Now, this isn't to say truth doesn't exist, that everything's subjective. I'm just saying this is reality. I've many times looked through documents like an IG report on Crossfire Hurricane, and I found myself in real time going, how come I haven't heard anyone say this? I find this to be a very important part. But oftentimes, 80 to 90% of the commentary is being directed by a small handful of people, and if they're not picking up on something or don't think it's important, then it never makes it out there in the ether, even though it's in black and white, because it's buried in a 1,000-page report. Same's true of analyzing debates or press conferences or interviews. And one of the things that's amazing to me is when you sit down and you watch one of these things, and then you watch the narrative that's crafted around it. And that, to me, was what happened last night with the train wreck interview of Kamala Harris on Fox News. To watch in real time, because the interview occurred, then I streamed for a couple hours, then I had a bunch of work stuff I had to do, and I went to bed, and so I woke up today and was like, okay, let's see what the interpretations were. And yes, there were an awful lot of people that had a very similar take to me, which I think is objectively true, that this was a really bad interview for Kamala Harris. It was bad on the substance, it was bad tonally, how she sounded, and it was bad in what she was trying to accomplish, kind of assuaging people that are undecided at this point that she has a clear-cut plan, she's different than Joe Biden. But many of the people in our Democratic Party, our establishment institutions, mainstream media people, etc., they had a shocking, albeit predictable take, which was that Kamala Harris did wonderfully. She did amazing. Some of them are people that I deal with regularly, like streamers that I've dealt with or people that I clash with on X. Some of them were people like Mark Cuban. Some of them were people like Democratic media surrogates. And to watch them gaslight people, and all using the same terminology, testy. It was a testy exchange. And so it was just amazing to watch these people. She was brave. She went into the lion's den. She's had one adversarial interview in like 5 years. And then now all of a sudden she's brave. And the way these people shamelessly lie is just unbelievably amazing. My greatest strength is my greatest weakness. I'm being authentic. I can't come on here and tell a blatant lie. It's not to say I don't mess up. I don't sometimes tell things that are wrong or not true. But I'm incapable of coming on here saying, I think Trump lost this debate. I think he lost the debate to Kamala Harris. Oh, well, I'm going to act like it was perfect. It was awesome. He did great. And I'm going to tell my audience that Trump won. I can't do that. So I come on and I say, I think Trump lost the debate. And my audience is infuriated. How could you say that? No, Trump won the debate. He won. So much so that for a month after the debate with Kamala Harris, I still had people in my call-in show weekly. That's the number one thing they want to argue about. You're wrong. Trump won the debate. Ultimately, for my conscience and for me as a person, and in the long run, that's a huge advantage. That's a huge strength to be authentic. But it's also a weakness, particularly in the short term. Particularly if you're trying to gaslight people into voting for the way you want. The people I interact with, no such scruples. Sure, they'll cloth it in, well, I'm just trolling. Like someone like Pisco. That's what he'll do. I'm just trolling. He was posting out on X. I heard people inside Trump's camp are furious. They're shaking because Kamala did so great. That's it. Kamala wins the interview. She did great. And there's actually, not for Pisco, but that's a narrative that's being pushed consistently. She did great. She did great. She did great. And there is strength in, if a bunch of people just sit around and repeat it over and over again, it does start to shape the narrative. It's how we got the idea that it was all cheap fakes, that Joe Biden had cognitive decline. Everyone said it. All the media, all the Biden people, all the Democrats. No, he's great. He's great. Sharpest guy in the room behind the scenes. How dare you? And these institutions, when they're all pushing the same narrative and controlling the narrative over and over again, it becomes effective. And it shapes our conversations. So, for example, I just had a video removed off TikTok for talking about the idea that Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer have both announced that they want to give a pathway to citizenship to illegals. They want the millions of illegals that they left in, and the entire time they were leaving them in, said, "It's how dare you? It's a racist trope to suggest that we're leaving these people in to vote. They can't vote. How dare you?" And now they're saying, of course we want to give them citizenship. It would be cruel not to. Gets removed. They've shaped that narrative. That's the narrative. And so they just repeat. They know they're full of it. They all know that Kamala Harris did terribly. They just don't care. What they're counting on is the vast majority of people, either the majority of people won't have seen the interview or only see little clips of it. And even those that do, if everyone's saying one thing that they're listening to, they'll just agree with it. Now, let me see if I can find this video. Have you ever heard of the Asch conformity experiment?
An experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3.
But on the third trial, something happens.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1.
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1. 1.
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1. 1. 1. 2. 1. 2. 2. 2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing
2.
with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2. 2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response.
1. 1. 2. 1. 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Asch. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1. 1. 1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Asch's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
It's really amazing. It really is. The idea that you could be peer pressured into believing that what you're seeing with your eyes isn't the case is truly a remarkable thing. And this experiment's dealing with something that there's a simple objective truth, the length of something. So you could see, if I was to say which of these two objects is longer, this pencil or these glasses, objectively the pencil's longer. And yet still, 37% of people were willing to deny the truth in front of their own eyes, either because they felt the necessity to give in to peer pressure to not rock the boat, or because they truly believe they must be wrong. And that's a simple objective truth. Now imagine something that's not as simple or as objective, like how well someone did in a debate, or how well they did in an interview. And it really is quite amazing the power of just having the most powerful people constantly hit home the exact same argument over and over. She did great. She did great. She's powerful. Or a message. She's joyful. She's joyful. She's joyful. J.D. Vance is weird. He's weird. He's weird. And it's not just that the majority of the environments where we get our information are basically all coming at things from the pro-establishment side. But it's also that there are millions upon millions upon millions of dollars being raised in this particular instance of this campaign to push those messages over and over and over again. This is why Elon Musk is a bigger threat than Donald Trump. Because Elon Musk allows, through X, one of the largest social media platforms, a piercing of the uniformity of their message. And that to them is a far bigger threat. That's why you see former Secretaries of State John Kerry and Hillary Clinton come out and say we need to change the First Amendment. We need to have a war on disinformation. That's why you've seen Mike Benz, and I agree with him, saying that these attacks on free speech online are the biggest threat that we need to deal with. Because if I can't even have this conversation with you, then cultural change or political change becomes very difficult to accomplish.